Simon O'Connor.
I'd like to thank the honourable member who's just taken her seat for what is an excellent contribution, also for her very kind words and compliments. I'm always a bit worried, though, as my colleagues might be, when Labour is giving me accolades and what that might signal. But no, very pleased to work on the committee with the Honourable Annette King. In fact, in beginning with this bill, I want to acknowledge the entire committee, the Health Committee, and the work that it's undertaking across a whole range of topics at the moment. And this will be another one we add to it as we discuss the health practitioners' replacement of statutory references to medical practitioners bill. I thank the Minister for introducing this into the House. I think genuine questions have already been raised around the timeliness. Why has it taken so long? I think there's a hint of it in the last few minutes of the Minister's speech when he noted all the various groups that had to be engaged in and consulted with, from the likes of the nurses' unions through to the Ministries of Business, Innovation and Employment, obviously the Ministry of Health and a whole lot of other groups. Because while this is a relatively simple bill, it's a bill that has significant implications. So I thank the Minister for bringing it to the House. And while it's predictable that it would come to health, I think it's something we're looking forward to being part of. This bill is very similar to a number of others that we've had of late. We're just finishing up in the committee the work on the radiation safety bill, and we had finished a while back now a bill that looked around the use of salaria and around contact tracing. And what links all of those together is it's playing into the government's focus in this space around healthcare that is sooner, faster and more convenient. And this is ultimately about an efficiency and updating of the statutes. This has been something that's required a long time in coming, but also we're trying to be in this space responsive to the changing nature of healthcare in New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, it's often, the terms medical practitioner and health practitioner are often used interchangeably, but they're actually quite distinct terms, and I might take the liberty to go through it a little bit for the edification of the House and for those listening, but also to put it into context. A medical practitioner, as currently defined, is effectively a physician or a surgeon. We would classically just think that of someone who's a doctor, a specialist. So your GP, your dermatologist, plastic surgeon, general surgeon, vascular surgeon, that's who we are talking about. And one of the examples that the Minister used a little bit earlier was around the use of death certificates. Now, part of this bill is actually going to reword what they are called. But at the moment, you need a medical practitioner. In other words, you need a physician or a surgeon to sign off on that document. We're saying that actually there is another group of people who can be involved, and those people we call health practitioners. And you'll excuse me if I ever read this part, because health practitioners are those who fall within the ambit of the Health Practitioners Competence Assurance Act of 2003, that very well-loved and well-known act, I am sure. Section 5 of that Act defines a health practitioner as a person who is or deemed to be registered with an authority as a practitioner of a particular health profession. So obviously a doctor, a physician or a surgeon is falling within that, but there's a whole range, Mr. Speaker, of other groups who fall within that. Just to give some examples, I don't intend to go all the way through them. Midwives would fall in under the definition of a health practitioner. Obviously, that's the profession, and it sits under the Midwifery Council. You have occupational therapy. They are health practitioners and come under a therapy board there. Those working in optometry, osteopathy, pharmacy, physiotherapy. Again, these are people we're quite innately aware of who work in the health space. So primarily what this bill is doing is saying people within these professions, within the correct scope of practice, can actually begin to help us in their healthcare space. Again, using the death certificate as an example. Why should it only be a physician and surgeon when in fact we can ask, as the bill suggests, a nurse to have that power? And a big part of that, and for those of us who have worked in the healthcare sector, we know that it has changed. We know that there's a number of people now who practice within the health space whose core competencies or scopes of practice are such that they can do things that we may not have thought of in the past. And the best way to example or illustrate this is the change from the tertiary to the primary care sector. So when we talk in the health about tertiary care, we're talking about specialists. Think about elements, say, of dermatology, plastic surgery. Think of the likes of endoscopy. Now, they've primarily been done by specialists. If you had a skin cancer, in times past, you would pretty much, if not exclusively, go and see a dermatologist, a plastic surgeon, and a general surgeon to get that done. But actually, the scope of practice of general practitioners over time has increased. Their skill levels increased, the technologies and the advances have increased, that you can now go to a general practitioner to have that done. It can now be done in the primary care sector. There's advantages to that, not only financial, but also it's just more convenient. So again, if you've got a lesion, you can go to your GP, he or she will take it out rather than having to send you down to a specialist. To further illustrate it, what's happened is actually nurses now are able to begin to enact in this area. We still have some steps to go, but nurses also have the necessary skills to work within this space. And I think the Honourable Annette King alluded to that and the great work that she introduced years ago as a Minister of Health to allow nurses scope to expand. The same is happening in the endoscopic space. Don't think about this too much, but it involves cameras going down one of two areas. Again, it's always been the domain, or primarily the domain, of specialists, but actually now nurses can be trained to do this service. Again, it can be done more cheaply, and that's a real win for the taxpayer, but it's also, again, more convenient. You can go down to a local surgery, your local, well, wherever your nurse or GP is, and if they are suitably trained, you can obtain their skills. So that's just an illustration, I suppose, of the background of why we can update these definitions through this particular bill, why we're saying it's quite safe and prudent that we will allow health practitioners to work in a space that was traditionally just medical. And so I think that is a positive. I think it is prudent. It's something I've certainly heard out in the community. It was alluded to earlier that some were doing a bit of a trip to the rural health practices, something I've been doing as well. In fact, I was down at Gore Health recently and hearing about what they call a physician assistant. It's effectively a person who acts as a doctor in all but title. A physician assistant is a position, a role, which has been around, I think, about 30 years in the United States, and we are trialling it here in New Zealand through the health workforce. It's a postgraduate level degree, obviously not a doctor's degree as we would understand it here in New Zealand, but a person who has postgraduate training in a very particular clinical space is able to do probably about 80% of what we would think a doctor could do. That's been trialled in Gore Health. Again, how do we increase the workforce and get them involved? So how that's going to manifest itself, it'll be in a number of areas. One quite key is in that multidisciplinary area. And two very quick examples, Mr. Speaker. We already know within ACC, as an example, if you need help, obviously you're going to have a GP involved. You may be seeing a specialist. Let's say you've got a back issue. You're going to be seeing a osteopath probably around that, if not an orthopaedic surgeon. You're going to have occupational therapists involved and so forth. A lot of the paperwork at the moment still must be done by the medical practitioner. We're saying through this bill that we can make some changes that actually the lead provider, the lead person who's helping you through ACC, can sign some of those documents. Similarly, one of the announcements actually in the budget was around the introduction of pain teams. In other words, those people in our communities, particularly in the orthopaedic field, that are in pain, we're going to bring multidisciplinary teams together. Nurses, occupational therapists, doctors at the moment, and without this bill, only that doctor can sign off on forms. Through this bill, actually the lead provider in those pain teams, so it may be the occupational therapist, will be enabled to do the documentation required. So I think it really fits in, as I said at the start, to services in health which are sooner, faster, and are more convenient. I think it's what New Zealand wants, and I say that with some confidence, not only as the chair of the committee and obviously going out in the community, but the fact so far we've heard, I wait for the other parties, but I'm pretty sure we've got widespread support in the House. So I can see New Zealand First nodding. I know Labour's going to support it. The Greens, I assume therefore everyone's going to support this. We as the New Zealand Parliament see that this is something important, something that Kiwis will understand, will find appropriate, which will make it better better health care for them. And finally, the most excellent Chris Hipkins wonders why it's taking so long. Well, we do have about 8 other speeches to go. We can always just forego those and go to the vote and call it a close for a Thursday. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.